Okay, we are now recording. All right, welcome everybody who's joining us live and those who will view us later to our event, Psychedelic Justice, BIQPOC Voices Matter, brought to you by Aware Project. My name is Jarrod Ekengren. I help run the San Diego Aware Project, and I've got Ashley Booth here, the founder of the Aware Project, to tell you all a little bit what we're all about.
Hi, everyone. I started the Aware Project about 5 or 6 years ago, after having my own big experiences and then looking out and being like, where are the others? Where are my people? And to try and educate the community. And so we have live events when we're not in a pandemic in Los Angeles and San Diego. And our goal is to change the public perception about psychedelics, to educate the community, to support the community, to be midwives to this transformational process that is happening on our planet right now, and which we all, I'm sure, agree on, that psychedelics can play a huge positive role in this process. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you, and I'm excited for this panel today. And we hope that we'll be able to continue to create these spaces for discussion, community building, in whatever way this mystery unfolds with the pandemic and everything else that's going on in the world. So good to be with you here.
Thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate that. And I do want to let folks know, for those of you who may not have joined us. Let me see here. Actually, we are now live. It looks like that was a practice run, everybody. So we are now broadcasting. For those of you who are just joining us, we thought we were in here with you all. But we now are. So I want to welcome you all to our event, Psychedelic Justice, BIQPOC Voices Matter, brought to you by the Aware Project. My name is Jarrod Ekengren, and I help run the San Diego Aware Project. And I've got Ashley Booth here, the founder of the Aware Project, to tell you a little bit about what we're about. ×2, Ashley.
Technology. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley. I started the Aware Project about 5 or 6 years ago after having my own big experience with psychedelics, and just wondering why more people weren't talking about this and gathering. And it's been wild to see how fast the landscape has changed in just that in these few years. I think we were probably one of the first psychedelic societies in the world, and now there are countless. So it's the mycelial network is definitely growing and activating, and we have live events here in Los Angeles, where I live, and in San Diego, where Jarrod is, when we're not in a pandemic. But it's great that we can meet here together and still have space to be able to share ideas and grow together. And it's just a pleasure to be with you guys and to be midwifing this this change that's happening on the planet, and the tools that we're all learning and developing and hearing from each other to be able to offer in service to the community. So it's great to be here, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Awesome, Ash. And I'll just, add a little bit to that, when you started it, the tagline is to rebalance the public narrative, right? And undo all of this propaganda and misinformation and all this thing that we had. And that's still a mission, and we still need to move towards that. But we are moving into this new space where for quite a lot of people, they're getting the message, they're hearing, and so many more people are coming in droves. And we have new questions that we need to answer about what kind of community are we building? You know, and how do we go about this the right way? And what are the challenges that we face? What are our blind sides? And how do we truly care for everyone? And all these questions and so many more. And I think in the spirit of that, we have such a great event today that's really in the spirit of that. So building community, and yeah, please check out our website, our mailing list for future events. We're going to continue to do some virtual stuff. We'll have some announcements after, but I would like to say, for those of you who have are coming through the Facebook Live or did not join through registering on Eventbrite, we are taking donations. Of course, it's pay you know, what you can or nothing, but we are taking donations for Aware Project overhead. We have a monthly overhead, as well as to pay labor to these lovely folks on the panel for giving us their time and their perspectives tonight. So you can do that by going to the Eventbrite page and registering and donating, or you can PayPal awareprojectsd@gmail.com. That's SD as in San Diego. So awareprojectsd@gmail.com. We love you either way. So just letting you know. I did want to try something funky here since we're doing this polling, and normally we do. Can you donate directly to the panelists? I'm sure we'll provide you that information. And that's going to be the last question that I answer as it pops up. But we do want to know where you're tuning in from. So if you want to go ahead and let us know. Normally, you know, we have our events in San Diego and in LA, but it'd be really interesting to see where everybody's coming in from today. So while we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and sort of introduce the event and introduce our panelists, and we'll get right into it. But before we do that, I want to gratefully bring up Ethos, who had something they would like to share with us. Ethos?
Yes, before I like to start off anything in any container that I open, I always love to give gratitude. And that first gratitude is to Pachamama and to Father Cosmos and to all the sentient beings in the plant realms for welcoming us to be able to dance on these sacred lands. And then I want to acknowledge that we all are occupying stolen land, and that it's important for us to do the education to know which land that we are occupying in this time. And I am currently in Colorado on the Ute and Cheyenne land, and I give acknowledgement for everything that they went through, and I give gratitude that we're awakening as a collective to finally acknowledge this. Next, I want to give gratitude to Jarrod and Ashley for the Aware Project, for putting BIQPOC voices forward and asking us to be here. And then I want to give gratitude to each and every one of the panelists here with me. Thank you for taking the time, the labor, the energy, and the emotional labor that it takes for us to continuously talk about our oppression and our lived experiences. And then last but not least, gratitude to each and every one of you that are tuning in. It really is an honor to be here, to be able to share our experiences and also our hopes and visions for the future. So thank you, Aho, and all my relations.
Oh, thank you, Ethos. Beautiful. Beautiful way to open that up for us. Thank you for doing that. And gratitude to you, and gratitude to all of you panelists for your presence here and the collaboration and your work. And I'm really excited for this event today. Psychedelic Justice, BIQPOC, Voices Matter. And for those of you who may not be aware, that stands for Black, Indigenous, Queer, and People of Color. And I'm also very grateful to COVID for making this happen. This isn't an event that's reactionary. This is something that some of us have been talking about for some time now, and for logistical reasons hasn't happened, but COVID and everything virtual has opened this up. So thank you, and I'm in gratitude for that. And I'm so excited. As just a quick note for myself on sort of this event, is I started working in these psychedelic spaces, particularly as an organizer. It was right away starkly obvious how white these spaces were to me. And as an event producer, there's almost a seemingly endless supply of white heterosexual men that have things to say about psychedelics. And there's a lot of great material in there. There's a lot of good things to be said. And especially in my experience locally here in San Diego, this is the truth, but it hurts us all greatly to have exposure only to narrow perspectives and experiences. And we need to hear and be exposed to broad perspectives to create these spaces that can hold all of us, that can help us learn how to truly care for each other, and to root out, the problematic ways that our mainstream systems can imprint themselves on us and our community. Even when we don't see it, to truly be the inclusive community that we think that we are, and that we strive to be. So I'm honored to have these 4 individuals here with us and come and share their experiences. I will say that we will have, after I introduce them, we'll get into a conversation, and we'll have Q&A after we move through that conversation. So feel free to text your questions as the event goes, and we'll field from that text to do the question. So I will go ahead and introduce these folks without further ado, and then shut up so you can come to hear them. First off, we have Oriana Mayorga. She is currently the vice chair of the board of directors for Students for Sensible Drug Policy. Previously served as the director of community engagement for Symposia, and is the co-creator of Empyrean, the first POC conference on psychedelics by women of color for women of color. Welcome, Oriana. Welcome, Sabrina Frometa. Sabrina is the founder of Yaya, an ecosystem of creators, organizers, and dreamers committed to Black and POC liberation. She also serves as the Director of Equity, Operations, and Culture for SPORE, the Society for Psychedelic Outreach, Reform, and Education. Really nice to have you here, Sabrina. Welcome, Evita Sawyers. Evita is a psychedelic enthusiast, aspiring psychedelic facilitator, and an advocate with a passion for creating safe spaces for Black, LGBTQ, and other marginalized groups to have safe access to psychedelic experiences and healing modalities. Evita is very active locally for the San Diego Aware Project, and a great help. Thank you so much for being here, Evita. And last but certainly not least, open it up and close out the introductions. Welcome, Ethos de Leon. Ethos has been an advocate for movements such as Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, immigration, and Indigenous rights activism in Washington, D.C. They have also created an interactive art exhibit for the Burning Man camp, Transformation. They have served as the art director and events director for Catharsis on the Mall, and were elected to its board of directors. They founded a podcast titled Shifting the Narrative Through Psychedelic Healing and Storytelling. And they continue to create spaces and events with the intention that everything is medicine for those who come into those spaces. So grateful to have you, Ethos. So I'm going to go ahead and just have us go around in the beginning and just have you, briefly introduce yourself, anything I may have missed, and tell us a little bit about your journey with plant medicines, psychedelics, and how you've come to be here now. We'll start top left as it is to me. So, Oriana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jarrod, for that intro. I am most certainly going to be using a little bit of inspiration from Sabrina. I won't go the whole lineage back, but I'll go to my parents. I am the daughter of Henry Mayorga and Norma Fuentes Mayorga, and I'm super happy to be here. My pronouns are on my intro right there. Born and raised New Yorker, dying to get to Miami. Virgo, 28, about to be 29. Yeah, super stoked to be here. I feel like I've known everyone for much longer than it is accurate. I'll say the things that you missed. I am a full-time grad student at Union Theological Seminary, which is a subsidiary of Columbia University. And so that's kind of how I'm still part of SSDP. I get to be part of the Columbia University chapter, and also at the moment, the vice chair of the board, which is a super honor. And I am thinking carefully right now in this season about the leadership roles that I'm in, stepping back from the ones that don't serve me, stepping back from the ones that don't lead to pleasure and ease. And I'm finding that that's actually a lot of them. So trying to figure out ways to paint more, because I miss doing that, to run more, to read more. And my focus right now, what gives me the most pleasure, is anti-racism. Learnings and education around how to help my non-Black, fellow POC and white identified folk counter their anti-Blackness. And so that's where my heart is right now. Super happy to be here. I'm a sister of 3, Victoria, Amalia, and Natalie, and I'll pass it on to whoever is to my left, which will be Sabrina.
Hi, that was so sweet. Thank you, Oriana. Okay, what am I supposed to be doing? Who am I? Is that it?
Yeah, a little bit about who you are and how your journey with plant medicines and psychedelics and how you've come to be in the space you find yourself now.
Okay, I'm moisturizing. I like to search for my answers. And slowing down is a really important thing that I've learned from my journey. And I think, yes, Jamila, moisturizing is hugely important. That's a really good question. I've been trying to reflect on that question about what is my journey, because I feel like, in a sense, I'm sort of new to psychedelics, even though I've had personal experiences with plant medicines for like 14 years. But yeah, I'm sort of, this conversation with you guys, with you all, is the beginning of my opening up to institutions. That we'll talk about that. We'll get into all that beautiful godly mess that is organization. But in short, I'll say that my medicine is mushrooms, and I think that they've allowed me to create ritual in my life as a transplant to this country, to this part of the world. I think it's really important to do that work, to do that ancestral work. And I think that America kind of strips us of ritual, right? And tenderness, and back to pleasure and joy, like Oriana said. So yeah, psychedelics has helped me to get myself home here. Lots to say. I'm a lot of things. I'm from Bushwick, New York, hence the hoops and the shirt. I'm in Colorado with the Cheyenne ethos. Thank you so much for bringing that power and that ancestry into this conversation. And I'll pass it on to whoever wants to do it, because this is a lot of pressure.
I can go. Hi, everyone. Hello. I am Evita Sawyers. I currently reside in San Diego, California. And my beginnings with psychedelic medicines, so I approached them from a space of recreation. I watched Rick Strassman's DMT, The Spirit Molecule, and then I read the book. And it began to fascinate me about these. At the time, I didn't have a relationship with them as healing modalities, but just ways that you could access altered states of consciousness, ways that you could expand your mind, just a different mental frontier. And so that was where it intrigued me. And I believe about these medicines, which my panelists can probably agree to, is like when you're seeking these experiences, you find that they're kind of seeking you in this really weird way, which, not to sound too woo-woo, but it's like totally true. So at any rate, I got in hand some DMT, and that was my first psychedelic experience. And it was so ineffable that I was like, what the, wait, first of all, can we curse? Okay, is it okay to curse? I need to know that. Yeah, okay. So I was kind of like, what the fuck happened? Like, what the fuck was that? So, and so I began to explore more. And I love books. And so I started watching all the documentaries and reading all the books and seeking out all the voices in the psychedelic community. And I could not find a single voice of color at all. It was all white men. But I was just like, white men as far as the eyes can see. And I was like, but why though? Like, why is that? Why? I had a hard time even finding women. And now I know about Kalindi and different people. Like I'm learning now that I've been in the community for a while, but in the beginner person that is approaching psychedelics, if you're just doing your kind of beginning work, all you're going to see is white men talking about this, studying it, having these experiences, and there wasn't anyone that I could connect to. And I was like, why is this? I was like, I know we're having these experiences. I know that we're doing these things. We have to be out there. Where are we? And so I began to just talk about my experiences. I began to talk about the things that it taught me. For me, the benefit of psychedelics in my life experience is that what they do is they break up the mental logjam, and they remind me that there's so much more to the picture of life than we are perceiving in our normal waking consciousness, because we're so focused on survival, you know, the keeping the eye. And so because of that, we process a lot of information. There's a huge amount of information in the world, and our brains just process enough to like get our meat sack through this existence for the most part, okay? So at any rate, and so it just began to show me that there's so much more to the picture than what we see. And why that was beneficial to me is because I found myself as a person who kind of likes a lot of control over life, is that I had a hard time processing other concepts of the way reality was, and it would cause me to do a lot of harmful things to the relationships that I was in, and I didn't like that. And so I began to continue my exploration. And so I've had experiences with LSD, I've had experiences with MDMA, I've had experiences with mushrooms. And then as I got more into the community, I began to see that these also have a spiritual component to them. And so I was like, okay, you know, and so I've done an ayahuasca journey, I've done San Pedro, I went to Ecuador last year and did a retreat. And, but as I began to do these more and more, I began to really, really, really desire that people of color, that queer people, trans people, people of other marginalized identities get to have this experience and get to get themselves into a place to where they get to think outside of just their normal method of survival. But people that are in marginalized identities, Black people, LGBT people, trans people, we don't feel as empowered to do these things. Number one, because we're not seeing our voices represented. So nobody's out there talking about it because it's very taboo for us. We're under more scrutiny. We don't often have as much access to it as white people do. We don't have, or any oppressive class. We don't often have the freedom to feel like we can do this because we don't know if we're gonna lose our job. We don't know if we're gonna get alienated from our family. We also have a traumatic experience with drug use, period, because of our communities and being marginalized. And so because of that, I began to really become passionate about being a voice in the community, not only as a person who says, I use these medicines and they are medicines, but also as a person who says, and these marginalized identities need to also have access to these healing modalities. And how do we make that happen? How do we grant them access to this? And so I reached out and was like, let me try to find some, way to involve myself in this work. And I found the Aware Project, and I met Jarrod, and I began to volunteer for the events and go. And we would have these conversations about this particular topic. And so now, because of that, I'm sitting here before you. So I don't want to take up too much time, so I'm going to pass it on. But I thank you all for being here. I want to say thank you to my panelists. I want to say thank you to Jarrod, and just really, 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 I'm excited. So I'm going to turn this over to Ethos.
Thank you, Evita, for that. I love just hearing all the different voices behind psychedelics, and I appreciate, Ori and I know each other, but like Sabrina and Evita, hearing from both of you it's already a joy, and we have like an hour and a half left of this, thank goodness. So I just want to appreciate your voices. I'm Ethos. I am a biracial, born to a Filipino father and a white mother. So I'm half Filipino and half colonizer. I take complete ownership for my ancestral karma and trauma and the DNA that resides within me. It's a really important part of my journey that grandmother ayahuasca, grandfather washuma, LSD, mushrooms, DMT, cannabis, and many others have guided me to do. I am a two-spirit, they, them, embodying my masculine and my feminine, and sometimes my child. And I have also been in the military for 6 years. And when I was in the military, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still enacted. And being queer and being who I am was very important to me at the time, because I just realized who I was, because I was born and raised in a Mormon church. And when I went into the Army, I had to hide myself again to protect myself. And when I came out, I lost all notion of who, at the time, my birth name is Natalie, who Natalie was, and I tried to take my life. And from there, I started smoking cannabis because I was prescribed antidepressants and sleeping pills that made me feel like a zombie. And I'm not a zombie. I'm a human being. And from there, I continued to not have any idea who I was, where I was going, what I was doing, and I was poor. And one day, after the elections, I was living in Washington, D.C. The elections happened, and it felt like this dense energy just fell upon that city. And once again, at the time I was drinking a lot of alcohol. I drank myself to black out that night, and I gave myself two choices. Two choices to turn myself into a mental health institute, because I don't understand how I'm going to walk outside in my own city and fear my life again. I thought it was safe during the Obama administration because of all the progressive legislation that was passed and protections that were passed. And I knew with this administration, all of that was gone. My safety was gone. Or I could dedicate my life to my healing journey. And I became sober. I knew how bad the mental health institutes were. And I said, there's no way in heavens I'm going to do that. But I'm going to dedicate to my life, to myself, healing journey. And I started asking myself, what lit a fire in my heart? And that was activism. I was at all the I was at the first women's march. I was at all the Black Lives Matter marches. I was at all the No Doppel Indigenous marches. I was at every single march, including giving away free cannabis in Washington, D.C., protesting the Ryder Amendment on I-71, where we couldn't buy, sell, or trade cannabis, even though it was legal. And including Black and brown people were still being locked up for smoking a joint on their porch, which was technically legal. And we were targeted and we were arrested and held for over 24 hours. And it was a very traumatic experience for me to have my rights so violated in a place that Jeff Sessions was willing to throw us in jail. And so from there, I tried LSD. And then from there, I ended up Burning Man. And from there, I ended up in Peru, staying with grandmother. And then from there, I ended up in Tulum again, meeting Jarrod, working with some more LSD. And now I'm here. Honored to share, honored to be here. Grateful for each and every one of you. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, thank you all so much. I some of you are dear friends and some of you are new friends, but I know that you're powerful people, but to hear you talk, and I know some of you mentioned is just so powerful. So thank you so much for all sharing and sharing yourselves. A couple of you mentioned something here that I want to touch on about coming in at first to these spaces in this community and what that was like. And I wanna ask, in that, if you could go back, what advice would you give to your younger self who is just being exposed to plant medicines, just being exposed to psychedelics, the community? So just to kind of think about that, and what would you say to your younger self who's just coming in knowing what you know now? And since one of the first person to bring that up was Sabrina, I'll go ahead and kick that to you at first.
I feel like I would say, you sweet, sweet little baby, what the fuck are you doing? On one hand, and on the other hand, I would say, well done, because in a sense, my first experience with mushrooms made me who I am today. The spaciousness and the openness that people sometimes say that they see in me was that moment that I realized, oh my God, I'm 15, but everything is alive and I'm nothing new. And so it was a spiritual moment as a baby, right? My brain, I think our brains aren't even developed at that time. And I think the negative piece of that first experience was that, like Evita said, I didn't know that it was a healing medicine. I thought that its sole use was only recreation. And so for a big portion of my life and my, my journey, if you want to call that my life with plant medicine, I didn't use it. I was using it and not being and communing with her, if that makes sense. And so now that I'm sort of an adult, I guess, I don't know, I was born in the 80s. I've sort of turned that into like the macro, right, outside of myself. And I think as a Black woman, as a Black Latinx woman, that's nothing new, because that's what I've known and what I've seen is that we heal and we go outward. We don't leave our families behind. We don't leave our communities behind. And so that's sort of what, I think that's the answer to the question. I ramble and I could talk for hours. So that's that, yeah.
And I'll pick up where that left off. Can folks hear me okay, or should I take off my headphones for a second? Okay, cool. Thank you, Quasi, for joining us. This is awesome. Seeing all the homies on the chat. This is great. Yeah, I think if I could talk to my younger self would be 19. And my younger self would probably say, and granted, this is given that I'm like, I went for a run today, 3 miles. I drank a lot of water. I had some good food. I feel great, right? Maybe the answer would be different if I was feeling differently. I think I would have told myself to not trust every white person that I was in community with. At the time, I only knew white people in community that had access to psychedelic medicines. And at the time, it wasn't medicines, it was drugs. It was substances that would alter their states of consciousness. And I didn't understand that it was a medicine yet. And I trusted the folks who were either supplying the medicine or who had access to them. And I didn't see anybody that looked like me, certainly not anyone darker, that I was in community with. And I think if I go back now with the analysis that I have now and the political education that I have now, I would have said, hold up, find other folks that look like you a little bit, that went to Pearls, born and raised, went to Yonkers, maybe find them. And if you can't find them, think about that for a second. And I didn't have that then, right? So I think that would have been the first thing. I think the second thing, for sure, outside of the political analysis, would have been test your substances, right? I was 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, maybe 23, 24, when I finally understood that bunk police, there was more than just bunk police, there was Dance Safe, right? And that Dance Safe had access to, a toolkit that would allow me to test for reagents. I didn't know that. I didn't know what that meant. I just trusted the person that, gave me the medicine. And so going back to the 19-year-old self is test your substances. I did do my Arrowwood research. I did read what I had to read. I spent my time, my anxiety sure helped with a year of research before I experimented with anything. But going back, I would have said, look for the folk who look like and sound like you and test your substances. And I think the last thing I would say to myself at 19, I think I thought for a minute that I was going to be a psychedelic therapist. I still think that I will be, maybe in my 60s, maybe my 70s when I'm older. But I thought for sure I was going to do it in my 30s and my 40s. And I didn't know that there were other options outside of that. And there are so many options outside of that if you want to be involved with psychedelics. There's positions like Ashley and Jarrod. There's positions like Sabrina and Evita and Ethos. There are so many options. That doesn't mean being a psychedelic therapist. And I didn't know that then. And I would have told myself that. I would put an affirmation on my mirror and say that every day. So yeah, I'll pass it on to Evita.
Thank you very much. And I loved your share, it was great. And I feel you on the psychedelic therapy thing and going this is a very broad and vast environment, and there are many ways in which we can add our voices to it and add our experience to it, and they're all valid. So I super appreciate what you had to say. I feel like I still am my younger self because I came to these substances in my like mid to late 30s, and I'm 38 now. So I feel like it would be kind of like a 2-year-old giving a 6-month-old advice. But what I will say to people that are just starting, and I really thought about this question, I reread it and I was like, I don't even know how I'd answer this. This is how I'd answer this is, you really need to unpack within yourself all of the beliefs that we hold about drug usage. Because a lot of what we know about quote unquote drug usage is was influenced by racism, was influenced by cisnormativity, heteronormativity, these sort of demonizing who uses these substances and who doesn't. And so like learn about that, because what you actually really learn, or what I've come to experience, is that everyone has their own relationship with the substances. It's deeply personal. And part of that is you going within yourself and finding out what biases you carry about the fact that you're using these things, because that's where things like shame and fear come in. And that's where you sort of see people having these negative experiences. If you're feeling shame about it, you're not going to reach out to someone else so that you can learn harm reduction practices, so that you can go get help if you find that you do need to get help. If you're feeling shame around it and you're shaming yourself for having these experiences, you're not going to seek the help that you need, because it's in the dark, and the things that we keep in the dark, we can't deal with. I think it's James Baldwin that said that, that whole quote he has about, we can't deal with things that we don't face. And if you're unwilling to be able to face it within yourself, you're not going to reach out when you may need help. And then also, what I would say is that because of developing your own relationship with the substances, you also need to develop your own relationship with your usage of it, because I'm of the opinion that all modes of usage are valid. And so our indigenous experiences with these medicines and how we've traditionally taken them are valid, and they have immense value. The scientific approach that we take to it, where we find out what's going on in the physical realm with these substances, what do they do to our brains, what do they do to our bodies, that is important, and that's valid. And then also the recreational experience is also valid, and there are things to glean from that experience. And so learn to sort of have your own relationship with what they're doing for you, because your relationship with them will be deeply personal. And in doing so, for me, myself, and just kind of having my own experience with them, I think I am able to approach them from a space of respect, because I'm not afraid of them. So, we see a lot of this stuff in the world, a lot of things that happen in marginalized identities is fear. White people fear Black people, heterosexual people fear queer people, cis people fear trans people. And so they don't respect them because they're afraid of them, because they're afraid of all these things that they've been told. And you can't approach a relationship with something if you're approaching it from a place of fear. And so work on the fears that you carry, not only about your usage of them and about them themselves, but also about the world in general, because that's kind of what they help you with. They help you with those, it's a way to confront like fear in your mind. It's interesting, it's hard to explain, but at any rate, so that is the advice that I would give baby Vita from 2-year-old Vita. And I'm gonna pass this to Ethos.
I've been reflecting on the last 3 years. I still feel like I'm a bit new to the psychedelic world in comparison to a lot of other people. And also I feel like I've lived 30 years in these last 3 years. And the first piece of advice is the same advice that I got on my first acid trip, was to follow your heart. And if your heart tells you to dance, dance. If it tells you to sing, sing. If it tells you to go hug a tree, go hug a tree. Whatever it tells you, just go do it. Because the moment that we don't is when the anxiety comes through. Mm-hmm. And so that's piece of advice one that I always give to first-time users also, and people that sit. The next advice is integrative tools. Bringing in meditation and yoga, and also healthier nutrition and gut health. I realized that a lot of I don't call any of my trips bad. None of my trips are bad. I call my intense trips, where my mind was going crazy, or I was feeling shameful or guilty towards something, attributed to not having integrative tools and tripping and then tripping and then tripping and then tripping and tripping. And that's actually something that I see common within our community, is that we're not integrating these experiences. What psychedelic experiences are, they're near-death experiences or death experiences. And every time they happen, we must integrate it back here, because we are spirits in a human body having a human experience here on the earth plane. And we have to recognize that, and integrating ourselves is huge. And I think it's a really big piece of education that's missing also. And then the third piece of advice is go trip in nature.
Yeah.
I started tripping in Washington, D.C. in the middle of Babylon. And then I was at Oregon Eclipse, and then I was at Burning Man, and then I was at Tulum. And I never actually had my first experience in nature until a year ago when I visited Denver, and I was in El Dorado Springs, and holy smokes, was it magnificent. Like, wow. And I think that's a part of integration also. I'm a really big preacher and also a big walker of the integration and being with Pachamama and really grounding yourself in during and after. So yeah, those are the three things, but I do not regret any of the last 3 years, even the mistakes, and definitely trusting a lot of the wrong people. And also, I'm here now speaking with every one of these amazing people. So
thank you all. One issue that I want to talk about, one thing that I've seen that's out there, is that there are many people out there who in this community who think that issues of identity are irrelevant or less important to psychedelic spaces, particularly because aspects of the lessons of these compounds help to reveal our deep connections to each other, to nature, etc., how we're the same. So with that being said, why is what we're doing here today important in the context of those voices?
Yeah, I'll take go ahead, you go first.
So I think that's valid, but I think that if you see the other realm that you enter through the experiences as a sort of utopia, place where we erase those things and we connect to the oneness, we still have to come back here. And that is not the order of the day when we return to the physical realm or the normal waking consciousness. And I think that we want to bring that back into this realm, but we can't do that without acknowledging that it's not here and why. And so having this belief that, well, I know that we're all one and I've had this psychedelic experience and I come back here, and so, you know, in this space, identity doesn't matter, but it does, because I bring my identity with me wherever I go. And another thing that is important that I just noticed in my own experiences, I feel like in order to exist in a space where you are willing to let your consciousness journey, you have to feel like your body is safe. And a lot of people in marginalized identities don't have the experience of feeling like their body is safe. Like they don't feel like, if they were not in their normal waking consciousness, of kind of always having to be on alert, because we're constantly being assaulted for being Black, for being queer, for being trans, for being, you know, not socioeconomically disadvantaged. Like we're always being assaulted for these things. And that affects us kind of being on alert for where that's coming from. Either you're experiencing actual violence or you're experiencing microaggressions and, you know, not somebody hitting you, but like you get microaggressions, people insult you, they invalidate you, they erase you. And so you don't feel like your body is safe. And so a lot of marginalized identities don't exist in realities where they feel like their body is safe and they can explore their consciousness. And so we need to take a look at why that is. You can't just say, well, you know, I've had this experience and now I've transcended this and I've, you know, gotten rid of all of these things, and so you should feel safe with me. It's no, like it's knowing that you exist in this space. Even if you're that there, you're not that when you're here, you're still carrying those things around. And for a community that preaches set and setting so much, and that, you know, we're dissolving our ego, then you should know that another person's trip is not about you. So it's not about whether or not you're a safe person, it's do they feel safe? And if they're saying that they don't feel safe with you, that's not personal. Don't take your ego into it. If you care about that person having that experience, allowing them to say, hey, let's do this so you have access to it in a way that feels safest to you, because that's going to give you the most optimal experience. And so that's why we have to take a look at these things and not slip into the space of going, well, you know, I just don't carry that around because I work through this. It's a constant work. And as long as we're here, it's going to be a constant work. Okay.
Yeah, I feel very much that this is, thank you, Evita, for that. Thank you so much. I feel like this is so much ethos question. Oh my God, I feel like ethos has been on the front lines of this question for the last 7 weeks. What the, for real. Like on the, you know, front lines of the spiritual bypassing and the white passing, which is not even a real thing. The white folks on her page, you know, on their page. And I'll say this, I think that there are organizations and folks and groups that share the sentiment, Jarrod, the question that you're asking. It's unfortunate, but it is true. It's beyond just the individual. There's like groupthink around this. TAM integration, which I think a bunch of y'all know, run by Daniel, shares a little bit of this ideology. So I'm gonna start off with that and say that some of the first spiritual bypassing that I've experienced was with this organization, right? I once got into it with one of the co-founders that, like, I think we're using different substances, because my substance that I'm using is forcing me to reckon with the fact that there are marginalized folks in this world. Like, the medicine that I'm using is not just letting me think that it's all peachy keen. The medicine that I'm using is reminding me that I have work to do for my people. And so I think maybe we're using different, I mean, I'm not just saying that facetiously, like maybe we're using different substances, because the medicine that I'm using is reminding me of like my ancestors and the work that has to be done in joy, in pleasure, in ease, and also of the work that has to be done. And some of these white folks that are in charge of these organizations, they must be using different substances, or they must be having different sitters that I don't have. One or the other. Something's happening here. And so I don't have as much experience as Ethos does with the spiritual bypassing, because I just remove them from my life. I don't have the capacity for that. I just don't. My sense has been, unfortunately, that I have found this, I've had this experience, Jarrod, unfortunately, more and more with the white race. I don't have this experience, this conversation with non-Black POC even. Or Black identified individuals. And so there's something to that, which I would encourage all our listeners to explore and just like see if you're noticing that as well. But I just don't have that. I have this experience with mostly white identified people, that we're all homies, that we're all in the same tribe, that we're all cool. I once did a direct action in 2018 that I'm going to talk about till I'm 95 years old. And this white woman put her hands on me. You know, she literally put her physical hands on me to stop me from chanting. And yes, at the time, though this person is not a friend now, at the time, a white identified person went and stopped her. And thank God for that. But I had a white woman touch me to want me to stop chanting. And to think about that, right? What is happening that the fragility is so deep that we don't want to even hear a sound, right? When it comes to standing up for oppression. And so I can get into this a lot more, but I really want to hear Ethos and Sabrina's perspective on this, because I know that y'all know this, especially out in Colorado.
Yeah, my first question is to our audience. What is your spirituality and psychedelic use grounded in? Where is it grounded in? I could tell you that my spirituality is grounded in social justice, because there's no such thing as unconditional love without accountability. Because the love that I've experienced without accountability is abusive. It's gaslighting. It makes me feel little. And every time that I want to bring accountability to the white person causing a harmful intent, I get kicked out of the organization. I get thrown and tossed aside like I was nothing and I did nothing for them. And in fact, after I leave that organization, I get blamed for everything that still goes wrong for it. So you can say love and peace all you want, but there is no love without accountability. There is no peace without justice, and there is no unity without diversity. And our BIQPOC family and relatives are begging white folk to learn how to love them and to learn how to love us. And it's hard because we have not been taught how to love BIQPOC bodies, including our own selves. I've been taught how to hate my body. I've been taught how to hate how I love. I've been taught how to hate every single aspect of me. I've never been taught how to love until I started using psychedelics. Psychedelics taught me how to love myself. Indigenous culture taught me how to love myself. My books taught me how to love myself, but no one around me taught me how to love myself other than to hate myself and to use myself until I was exhausted and I couldn't get out of bed. So I ask you again, what is your spirituality grounded in? And if it's not grounded in social justice, then you are so reaped with privilege that you don't have to demand justice. I'm tired of seeing my Black relatives, my Black and trans relatives being murdered relentlessly on Facebook. I'm tired of seeing my Latinx family and relatives being locked away in cages and separated from their families because of what? Because we created destruction down there as being a part of the United States and part of the neoliberal agenda. I'm sick and tired of watching my earth be raped and water protectors being killed and murdered and disappeared and kidnapped. When are we going to be sick and tired of being sick and tired? I'm sick and tired. I'm exhausted, actually. So white folk, my other half of myself, when are we going to step up and do better and be the ancestors that are 7 generations after us and before and be on call on us? Because you know what? Right now, I want to call on half of you to come protect me. But the way y'all showing up and validating my anger and my sadness and my grief that I feel every day for the people that are murdered because of this oppressive system. I'm disappointed on a constant basis because I'm told that my lived experiences don't matter. Because you can't listen. We need to take a step back and listen. We've been talking for so many generations, and our entire culture, our entire storyline, our entire history books are rounded around this lie and projection of privilege and colonization. It's done. I have a zero tolerance for belief in thought systems that rob an individual of their enlightenment and their attainment of their enlightenment. Anything that takes that away at an early time, I'm done with. And we all need to be done with that as a collective. So I ask you once again, what is your spirituality and your psychedelic use grounded in? Sabrina.
Wow, right. That's deep. It's like that's actually a drop the mic moment. What you just did. Thank you. I kind of feel you, Ethos, in the disappointment that we even have to have this question and this conversation. Because the many here that are out here thinking, even asking this question to themselves, you know, if someone who's taken psychedelics is asking themselves, why do we need to talk about identity or even a piece of somebody's identity? And I sort of have to laugh because it's like, I feel it's so ridiculous that if someone who is taking psychedelics and feels like someone's identity is not worthwhile or important in the conversation, then I agree with you, Oriana. They haven't taken the medicine. It could be from the same fucking batch, but you have not taken the medicine. You're not even in recreational states, right? And I feel like this question implies and demonstrates just how compartmentalized all our shit is, right? This isn't even, we're, you know, the psychedelic industry, the psychedelic community is, we're all reflecting what we've seen and what we've learned, And a lot of us are in America right now. So it's no surprise that we're in this space asking a question about, hey, why would we want to center a piece of your identity right now? Well, how is that important? How is that important to integration? We're talking about integration and how critical that is to really get the message, right? And be with that and get out of yourself and get out of your way. So I think this question got me a little heated. It's worthwhile absolutely talking about. This is not, my dog is barking, I'm sorry. I think this question is very worthwhile engaging with. And I think that we really gotta disengage and unlearn individualism and compartmentalization, because we often ask questions about the personal, the political, and the professional. And I'm sitting there thinking, have you ever taken a psych? I don't understand here. Are we talking about, have you had a fucking cup of coffee, or are we talking about a mushroom tea? What have you had? Because, and this is even, you know, to maybe like 20 white people that I know in this space. Maybe, actually, I'm gonna be realistic and say 10 white people that I know in this space, white people that get this and are taking the time and the energy and their resources and their coin to step into this conversation with humility, because some of even the questions that we have to and need to ask are fucking ridiculous, right? Because I want Jarrod and I want Ashley to come with their full selves. Every single piece and layer. I want that, because that's where the magic happens for us that have done this. That's where you figure out who the fuck you are and who the fuck you really want to be. I'm cursing a lot. Bushwick, Brooklyn. Sorry.
Love it. Thank you so much. That was really amazing. And what was coming up for me with these shares, particularly with Ethos, but with the rest of you as well, is a couple of things. You know, one, you know, I as a white person, whether I know it or not, or feel it or not, have incentive to ignore these other things. It helps me continue in a privileged space to say, hey, we're all equal, to ignore. And that is inscribed on me in a way to where it's potentially creating blind spots. And these will come out of different visions. And I might not even know that these are these forces that are acting out. And that's number one. And number two, that, you know, you're talking about people taking different medicines, that, you know, psychedelics aren't a panacea. They're not the magic bullet that automatically makes you a perfect being. They're an invitation to work. And if you're not looking to do the work, the heavy work, then these types of inscriptions on ourselves might continue to persist and not show us everything. And that was what was coming up for me when you were speaking, and kind of in that vein, and speaking to those blind spots, what are some things that I, as a cisgender white male, might take for granted about my experiences with psychedelics that may be different for a person of color or someone who's gender non-conforming or other non-dominant identity? Ethos, did you want to kick off?
Yeah, I can definitely jump this one off, because I started tripping in the middle of Washington, D.C. with a bunch of white folk. I mean, it was actually way more mixed, but the people that were like trip sitting me were white folk. And I remember walking down the street, and one of them just sat in front of sat on the patio of a really nice house. And I was like, what are you, like, I'm like freaking out. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what are you, and then she's like, what? I'm just sitting here. I'm like, they'll call the cops on you. What are you talking about? Like, you're just sitting there. And it just made me realize, I've been thinking about that experience more recently as I'm reflecting on my story, and that there's really a true thing about this, your skin color being criminalized. And just because psychedelics make you feel free and you could do whatever you want, that when you're with a brown or a BIQPOC person, that jumping in the fountain in the middle of a city is not safe for us. That running around doing things that are normally like just fun for white folk but are like breaking the law and can get us arrested, that can happen. I was just sitting on a beach smoking CBD joint, and this police officer came over and started harassing us. My white friend was like, why are you doing this? And he started unbuckling his belt towards me because I'm like, this is just CBD. I'm like, oh man, this dude's about to arrest me and pull his weapon out on me. And she's like, what's going on? I don't understand why he's getting so aggressive. I'm like, it's because I'm brown. And right now, like, it's really, I have lived in this dichotomy where I am white passing in the winter when I'm on the computer, not outside all the time. But when I'm outside, I turn very dark. You know, it's really weird. It's a really weird existence to be in. But those types of things, like, even though white folk can feel free to do whatever they want when they're on psychedelics and just, it's not like that for us. In fact, there's more anxiety of like, oh my God, am I going to get arrested here? Am I going to get arrested here? And like, am I going to get in trouble? And that's something I definitely had to work past. Like, I'm allowed to occupy space. And that was my work. And also, white folk, just be aware when you're with a BIQPOC person that it's scary for us at first to face that criminality that was ingrained in our identity that we're not aware of, but bubbles up with psychedelics. I'd love to pass it on to whoever feels called to come next.
I guess I'll go and say that, Jerry, I appreciate that question. I also want to especially name to the folks who are listening today, like, be mindful of like other white light organizations that are suddenly doing BIPOC panels and who are not asking this question. That's something to be mindful of. So truly, Jarrod, not just because you're the homie, right? But because I think I've been listening carefully to the last couple of panels that I've seen happening since the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor killings. And this is the first time I'm hearing this question in the Psychedelic BIPOC series. So thank you for doing that. And for the listeners to be mindful of that. I think, you open yourself up to a big, to a lot of possibilities, Jarrod and Sarah. I'm sorry, Ashley. And one of those is that, why now is this conversation happening, right? You said logistical things at the beginning, right? But I really want white organizations, or mostly white organizations, to think about why is this question, why are we now centering and amplifying BIPOC voices, right? We have an idea, but I want to hear it from my like ally white folk to like really own up to like, why are we doing this now? Why wasn't this a priority at level 10 weeks ago, a year ago? And I think we always have an idea around that. And I would encourage the folks who like believe in their fibers of their beings that they are allies to like speak about this openly. You don't have to do it publicly, but speak about it openly with your homies. Speak about it openly with the people that you call partners, right? And how do we make it so that BIPOC voices aren't only amplified when the media sensationalizes, murder? Like, how do we do this so that this is something that's always a constant? I don't want to just feel lucky or like appreciated now. I want to feel centered and like wanted always, because my voice is important. My critique is important. And so I appreciate you asking this question. And I'm grateful because I know that you ask it and you want to respond. And so for that, I'm happy to be here and to share that. And again, just to encourage folks to think about what are other white-led orgs that are suddenly doing BIPOC series and aren't asking these questions. And I'll pass it on to either Evita or Sabrina.
I'll go. So I think that what you might take for granted as a white male using psychedelics is that that your access to the experiences that you want to have in general as a white person is just a lot less obstructed. And so because we don't move through life from a space of just feeling like, any experience that we want to have, we can have. We take a lot of fear into the experiences that we seek as people of color. We don't feel as free, like Ethos was saying, in these spaces as you do. And I also think that there is almost a heightened level of importance to bring more awareness into this space, because there's something about having a violation in this space, whether it indirect or direct, that is a lot more challenging because we're not in our waking consciousness. And so you can't, you enter into the space of almost being hyper able to be like gaslighted because you're not in your normal waking consciousness. And so you're kind of questioning your mind, because that's what these spaces are about, is getting yourself to a place where you kind of begin to explore your mind and kind of question your mind, but in a safe container. And so there's almost a responsibility to bring a heightened sense of awareness into this space, so that you are not perpetuating a lot of these things that happen in the regular world, thinking that, well, you got into this space where you shed it. And when a person is trying to advocate for themselves in that space, you're not seeing it because you're like, well, you know, we're here. And so that's not what I'm doing. You can't trust your own mind. So I think we need to bring more of awareness to this space. We have more of a responsibility to come to this space. And I think that a lot of white people just, you know, white and oppressive classes, they just don't think about that. Because that's not something that they have to do, because life doesn't assault them in those ways like it does for marginalized identities. I also think that we have to understand that these things also cause us to relive and process trauma. And a lot of the trauma that marginalized identities, Black people, trans people, LGBTQ people, people of lower classes, et cetera, all of the others that are not cis, het, affluent, Christian, white male. That's not done. So we're processing trauma in these spaces. And the trauma that we're processing are not only personal trauma, but it's also systemic trauma. So trauma that we've experienced in our family, so familial trauma, trauma that we've experienced in living in our bodies and navigating our bodies through the society and the things that it places on us. And so when you get into that space where that trauma is coming up and you're feeling that anxiety, and you look across the room and someone's there that represents your trauma, whatever that is, and how you're not in a space to, because your consciousness is expanded, how do you respond in that space when you're literally staring your trauma in the face in the form of a physical person, even if that person is not personally doing that to you, but they're a representative of that. And so when you are trying to do this deeper work that psychedelics can often have you do, this deep work of bringing that trauma forward so that you can process it and you can let it pass, you can do that more when you wake up or when you experience a person who can also share that with you. They can share that trauma with you. They can hold space for that trauma. They can hold space for that trauma in a genuine way and not in this very flippant, like either A, I'm going to invalidate it, or I'm going to do this very saccharine kind of like, oh, that's so terrible that you went through that, without doing the actual deeper shadow work of unseating that within themselves and dealing with the part of yourself that feels like that person deserves that, because that's what society tells us. These people that are other, they're marginalized, they deserve these traumas that they've gone through. And so you need to bring more accountability into this space and not less. And so that mentality of just, oh, well, you know, like, you know, this doesn't exist here. No, like you need to be like, no, this exists. And we come to this space because we're going to deal with it. And I'm gonna deal with it in you, and I'm gonna deal with it in me too. And so bring more awareness into that space. Don't enter this space from a place of, you know, I'm trying to get away from these things. Enter into the space, go, no, I'm coming to this space because I'm going to deal with these things, because that also may happen. Yeah, you may have a time where none of that comes up and you just get to enjoy it, and that's valid. But you're also going to have times where these things need to come up, and don't take for granted that everybody's experience with it and everybody feels the same, the safety that you feel, they feel the freeness that you feel. Understand and be able to hold space that we approach these from different experiences. Listen to our experiences, validate our experiences, educate yourself on our experiences so you can be aware, and you know, do your due diligence. And so that's what I would say.
Thank you.
With that, Evita, wow, all these questions, right? Like there's so much to say and so much to sort of process while it's coming out of me. Somebody somewhere once said that we're 99.9 the same in terms of our DNA, our brain capacity, all of that, biological. I'm not a scientist, so scientists, feel free to refute that on the chat. But that seems right in my heart and from the work that I've done. So, you know, it sort of lies in that 0.1%. right? Our differences lie in a very small sort of data set. So when you ask this question, and I think it's so beautiful that a white man, a cis white man, is asking these questions. Keep up the good work. And when you're asking these questions, it's like, you know, the absolute opposite of who you are. Do that, right? It's like, read that, talk to her, talk to them, talk to they, talk to him, talk to, you know, whatever. But do the opposite of who you are. I mean, that's just, you know, to me, it's like, we're doing this right now, relationally speaking, is we're sort of, our neurons and our brains are mirroring what's going on in this conversation. So, you know, by getting into these conversations, white people out there, and I'm going to include white women, cis as well, because you don't get a pass here, honey bunches. Like everybody else is saying here tonight, it's like, you know, do more, do this, and keep asking, keep doing the work. But, you know, don't isolate your experience and your capacity and your power as a human being to just recreation, right? Because you know you're a god. I know as a Black woman, I'm a god. So what's up? How come you didn't get that from that one experience or twice or third or 20, you know? Let's talk about that. Those are just questions. But I hope you.
No, thank you all. Thank you all. I'm hearing you. I appreciate you answered. I'm hearing you. We're going to continue this conversation. And, you know, Ori, you gave me an out. You don't have to answer publicly, but you know, I'm not gonna take it. I'm gonna answer the question. And this is something that I've been asking myself. You know, why now? Why now? We've known about this. This is nothing. This shit is nothing new. And I'm asking myself, you know, and like you said, I can't speak to everybody, although I have my ideas, but I can speak to myself, and I'm trying to think, and I think of myself, I have this idea of myself, why I get these things. This is not new to me. I've worked for these things. I have this intention. I've talked with you, blah, blah, blah. The idea is, well, I've been intending to do this but why did it take this to get it off the ground? Why did it take this to have intentions turn into reality? Why didn't I've talked to Evita about speaking at Aware Project. Why didn't I do that sooner? You know, and just asking these things, and I don't have the direct answers for why that is, but you know, letting you know that I'm asking that question, and yeah, why now? I'm grateful that it's happening, and I feel committed to continue to ask those questions. So thank you all for helping me, and I appreciate that. Appreciate you giving your time and energy to answer a question directly for me. You know,
hey, Jarrod.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just say one last thing before we move on to the next question? Because it's so good. But I think it might be helpful for the audience to understand the difference. I don't think it's COVID. Excuse me. You know, I think Ethos said, like, go to nature, you know, if you can, go to nature. And, you know, my first time having a mushroom experience in nature was when I was 30 years old. And I've had a 14-year experience with this thing. So, and that's not because I hate nature. And it's not because I'm afraid of nature, because I'm a city kid. We have nature. And I know nature. And so just a little anecdote to share with you all the disparities and why it is important to have these conversations, because our experiences are that different in that 0.1%. That's it. Safety is everything.
Thank you. Thanks for adding that, Sabrina. So the title of the event is Psychedelic Justice. It's a catchy title. What is it? What the hell is psychedelic justice? I'm gonna ask Oriana to start us off with that.
Well, if anyone here can afford the URL again, I owned it for 2 years, and then I let it go. In 2018, I was sensing that there were not many movement builders anti-oppression organizers like actually intersected with psychedelics. There are some that like psychedelics, like that like the substances, that like feel that they're powerful. But I'm talking about movement builders. You know what I'm saying? Like in their blood and their bones, like that's what they've been doing like their whole life, and then also have an interest in psychedelics. I've only met one other person, and it was like 2 days ago. You know, re-met this person. It's few and far between. And at the time, I thought 2018, okay, cool. So I'm one of the few people that like has an analysis. This is my own sort of small insular world. I thought that I was one of these few people that had this analysis on class and race and gender and anti-oppression that had an intersection and interest in psychedelics. And I was like, well, there have to be others out there that also have this. And there are clearly this panel and beyond, many people, right? And at the time I was like, I would love to create something that can encapsulate what does it mean to have an anti-oppression lens and an interest in psychedelics. And to this day, Jarrod, that question, I don't have the perfect answer for that. In fact, it's actually like it's the question that I like to ask the people that I think I want to be in a deep relationship with. It's like, what is psychedelic justice to you? And so I don't know it yet. And I'm really curious to hear what Evita and Ethos and Sabrina has to say about it. But certainly it's something that I thought there is a space and a necessity for it. And maybe I could find the others that like want to build whatever that is with me. And I actually think right now it's like still not super lit. Like I think it's going to be like the shit in a few years. Like I don't think that we have enough folks. I think we have like 10 people, maybe 20 people, maybe that care about this. But in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe there'll be an interest in this. Maybe people will be like, oh, justice works with psychedelics. It's not just a sort of like, you know, add-on kind of thing. So I'm curious to hear what Evita and Ethos and Sabrina has to say.
I'll go next. So for me, oh, I'm sorry. I went in the order that she said. So she said Evita, so I was like, all right, she said me second. I'm just gonna do it. Call it nerves. But at any rate, for me, what psychedelic justice looks like is restoring the right to marginalized identities to have ownership over their minds, which are constantly assaulted in our society, and to seek to heal those, to have access to those healing modalities and access to the experiences that they want to have, and to believe that they deserve a full human experience, and that this is part of these human experiences that they want to have, that they should and can have those. I think it looks like addressing why they don't feel free to do so, and not only taking a look at it from a space of going like, oh, well, that sucks, but kind of like, you know, what am I doing personally to ensure that this remains in place? And it looks like also validating their voices, like this event, and their experiences, because they create a more rich and a broader picture of what these things are, and they're necessary. So I think it looks like, you know, creating space for people who are normally told this is not for you, for it to be for them. And looking at who those people are, and really looking at who those people are, because you might get, you know, some like, maybe, you know, you might get like a white person or, you know, someone from our class that grew up poor, and they say, oh, well, I didn't have access to those things either because I didn't have money. But you didn't have access. It didn't have anything to do with your race, or it didn't have anything to do with your sexuality, or it didn't have anything to do with your gender. That was something that you didn't experience. And so it looks like acknowledging that and seeing what you can do personally in order to ensure that we're all rising up together. Because if this is supposed to be about healing and elevating the consciousness and, you know, lifting up the collective, then we should be trying to get as many people forward as possible. And that means that we have to reach our hands out and see where we need to extend our labor so that we can pull up as many people as possible. And so that's what psychedelic justice looks like to me.
This is a great question. I just literally like Googled justice. And I was like, what the fuck, what did Webster's white ass say about justice? And, you know, it's basically what it says here is that it's the protection of rights and punishment of wrongs. So I think the question around what is psychedelic justice is it's just a beautiful question. because I think, are we talking about in America? Because in the American context, we look at justice as a punitive measure, a dehumanizing measure. You know, the kind of way, you know, what is it? You know, it's kind of like shameful and blame, which I think a lot of our parents use, and it works. But outside of that familial nuclear container, when it goes into a system, it is devastating and violent. And this is why we see, you know, that Evita is sweating in San Diego at this time, whereas in a prior year, that would not be the case, right? We're all fucking sweating and in flames, right? So I don't mean to dramatize that for the sake of drama. It is the reality. I think we all should know this. If we're in this conversation about psychedelic justice, we should, you know, when we're trying to figure out what the answer is, I don't have a definition. I think we need to get away from a standard definition when Webster gets one for this. Because justice for me also looks like being involved in conversation, right? It also looks like, you know, creating spaciousness in myself, in my heart, for people that hurt me and pain me, right? Like this is a really big question, because then we have to redefine justice as it is, right? Because if we use that punitive shit, that means I cannot really commune with white people because I'm in danger, right? So, you know, I'm sort of concerned and excited to build a coalition, a network of people of color in psychedelics so that we can build power. Because there's a lot of money, as we all probably can know, in psychedelics. If not, happy to send you links. There's a lot of money and white investment for profit in this space. And so we need to do what cannabis was able to do, which is advocate for that, activate for that, and fight for fairness. That's sort of my take on the question about psychedelic justice. But I'm down for co-creating that as well.
One, Ori, I just gotta always compliment you because you always keep it so real. Like every time your mouth opens, it's just the realest shit I've ever heard. So I just have to compliment you on that and just like give that credit where it's dude, no, sorry. Like it's so great. Everyone need, and your corn, dude, cracking me up. But and you know, I'm gonna take us on a little quick story journey to the past, to the present, and to my hopes and dreams for the future around this question. In the past, right? Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow talked about this, and I just happened to be reading that book right before I started taking psychedelics, so maybe that activated something within me. The first time I took LSD, I was literally protesting Jeff Sessions reading that book every time the GOP started bullshitting. But what it tells us is in the past that psychedelics and drugs were used to criminalize Black and brown and even queer bodies, and that there's a whole slew of language and slang that has helped criminalize that, such as thugs, gangsters, gangs. We associate that with people's skin color, right? And so that was a part of our past, and we have created a mass incarceration. The crime bill of 1994 is a perfect example of that. And we continually to mass incarcerate Black and brown bodies in this country for psychedelics and drugs, for substance one use. God, I cannot talk right now, but you get what I'm saying, right? And that is still current. I'm looking at all these dispensaries in Colorado, in California, and all over the country opening up, and I know that there's still Black and brown bodies that are still locked up before cannabis, for mushrooms. And what I'm seeing is white cis men capitalizing this industry while Black and brown bodies are still being locked up. That is injustice. And that's what we call psychedelic legalization and psychedelic decriminalization. How does I-71 in Washington, D.C. pass, but Black and brown bodies are still being locked up in central holding for smoking a joint? While I'm while I'm smoking joints everywhere. How ridiculous is that? That is legalization. That is decriminalization. That is not justice. So I stopped using, I don't support legalization. I don't support decriminalization. What I support is justice. What I support is any legislation that is written that includes the reparation, that includes the pardon, the release, the integration of mental health support, and every type of basic living needs support needed for those Black and brown bodies to integrate back into our society. That's what I believe that all legislation should be including, and that's psychedelic justice to me. Then where we move to, what I'm creating personally right now, is a council-like experience for community justice. I'm done using the police force. I'm not waiting for the government to help fix things. I'm done waiting for you. I'm decentralizing. I'm done. And I'm going to create something with my community, with these 5 amazing people, and I'm going to have a conversation. We're going to see what the community wants. And what I hear so far the community wants is a restorative, integrative, unitive justice system. I know BIQPOC don't want to exile white folk out of our community. We appreciate the ones that are doing the work. Sabrina, I personally, I mean, some of y'all questionable sometimes, and then I'm like, okay, maybe I gotta like put this kindness to the side. And also, though, we are still all one. At the end of the day, that is something that is a big lesson that we learn from psychedelics. And I want us to be able to come together, have a reporting system, have a council that's elected by our community, and for us to have a conversation. And then for that person who has violated or created a harmful impact or violated our community's core agreements to have a conversation. Be like, hey, what's going on? What's up with you? Like, what were you feeling in that moment? And let's unpack that. And not only that, here's some free mental health service for you. Because all of this is child wounds. All of this is inner childhood wounds that our parents have passed down from us for generation to generation to generation. And if we start to look at ourselves as wounded children in adult bodies, I feel that we would treat each other differently than this punitive justice system. We're locking up wounded children in this terrible jail system instead of actually treating them like the human being and the traumatized human being that we are. And that to me is what that looks like. And in the future, we bring back an indigenous culture of talking circles, and we start talking as a community and holding community accountability. Right now, we have no idea what our value systems or our core agreements are in the United States or across this globe. Modern society doesn't give a fuck about it. You know what our value system is? It's money. It's material. Like, I'm done with that. My value system is integrity. It's sacredness. And when I fall outside of those things, I hope to heavens my community lets me know so I can be the highest version of myself. And I'm going to continue to hold the collective to the highest version of themselves. And I'm going to create systems and structures and justice systems for that to happen. I'm not waiting for anybody else anymore. And I hope you aren't either. And I invite you to join me on this ride.
Thank you all so much. It's, man, I really got that is if that's a start, Oriana, then that's a damn good start. So I'm so happy that y'all are doing this work and bringing these questions and these issues to the forefront. And let me know, from the position that I'm in, I want to work towards psychedelic justice, towards accountability, towards forgiveness, towards being together, not denying our shadows, but embracing each other and being in space together and bringing that forward. So thank you all, and thank you, Ethos, for that. Mic drop, Ethos, exactly. As we move towards that, for new people come into these topics, and not for new people, just for new people and everybody, and in these spaces, come to these spaces for the first time or who are already in these spaces, how can we learn to navigate these issues with the right attention, the right intention, and the sensitivity for us to bring about that more open, inclusive environment, the one that's moving towards justice? Does anyone feel particularly called to go, or do you want me to call?
I got it. I'll go. I think that honestly, what comes to me when I hear this question is like, kill your ego. Like, we talk so much about killing our ego in this space, and I went through ego death, and I took 5 grams of silent darkness, and now I don't have an ego anymore, and I figured out how to transcend it. And I'm like, kill your ego. So if someone is coming to you and they're trying to hold you accountable and trying to, because I read a quote once that said, when a person gives you a boundary, it's because they're trying to remain in relationship with you and not the other way around. And in order for us to allow ourselves to hold space for that, we have to learn to get over ourselves. And so like my message about how we do that is you learn to get over yourself. And think about somebody else, think about somebody else's experience, have compassion for someone else. And in doing so, you create a safer environment for others to come and sit at the table and feel safe to do so. Because they know that they are going to be validated, they are going to be accepted, they're going to be welcomed because you're not running around making it all about you. And so there is my 2 cents.
And I want to, oh, Sabrina, you.
Real quick, Evita, I feel like I get super inspired every time you talk. So I'm just like, I gotta go. It's a beautiful question as well. Like, how do we activate ourselves towards attention and intention and sensitivity with this stuff? And I think it depends on the audience. If we're talking white people, there's a set of things. If we're talking to POC, there's a set of things. If we're talking LGBTQ, like there's a set of things for all of the identities and the intersections of that. And I'm with you, Evita, like also do the work. I'm looking at the question here on my laptop. You know, and to, again, to sort of hold it all together, what Ethos is saying about consider yourself and other people the babies that you are, right? With psychedelics and this psychedelic space, since I've sort of been in it, tippy-toeing in the last 8 months, is a super white male concept, structure, house. And so this question is awesome. And also you gotta check your fucking house. What's the wallpaper, right? Like, when was the last time you looked at your I don't know. I don't own houses. I've been in apartments since, you know, I was born. But whatever homeowners have to do with your fucking houses, your lawnmowers, whatever, take care of your house. Before we go out there in the world producing content, having services and programs, and like Oriana said, hosting events, let's do the work. Let's sit with the dark and the shadow. We already know, no matter what religion you abide for, or any spiritual anything, we know that in the shadow there's fucking light. Somebody said this earlier. So my sort of advice to people trying to figure out how to do this stuff is ask questions, pay those people who you ask the questions of, tell them to tell you the rates, and let's stop talking about love and psychedelic healing and start practicing it, right? Because love is tender, love is gentle, and it's ferocious when it needs to be, right? So let's stop playing like it's woo woo, right? Woo woo is up here, but it's also in here. So yes, I'm excited about Ethos call to action saying about a council. Like, let's create the web that whiteness doesn't want us to.
I'm happy to go next so I can let Ethos do the truth bombs at the end. We're all here for that. Thank you, Evita. Thank you, Sabrina. I'm going to piggyback quickly off Evita, a little bit of Sabrina, and then myself. Killing the ego, that's where it's at. I struggle. And yeah, I some white folk like reached out to a person of color recently to speak like crap about me. And it was like a really good moment to remember to hold that frustration, that anger, but to also kill my ego, right? And when I'm talking and I'm preaching here and I'm fighting, I'm saying hold people accountable, call them out, call them in. That applies to me too. And so checking myself on that front too. And I remember having a pit in my stomach when I heard this. I was like, oh no, who's talking about me? What do they have to say? And then I found out that it was a white person. I was like, I really don't give a shit. But it was a helpful moment, right? To remember like, oh, I have ego, obviously, you know, I have that too. And so thank you, Evita, for naming that. And thank you, Sabrina, too. You know, Jarrod, what's interesting about your question is that, and I know we all know this, right? Like, impact is more important than intention, right? So I don't give a fuck about someone's intention, right? Because I know the road to hell is paved in that. And so I think what really captures my attention is more about the attention part of your question, and about how to navigate, you know, this community in a more inclusive and open place. That's where I'm at. And that's what captures me from that question. And so I've been saying all over, amplify this tonight, this event, because it's lesser known BIPOC voices. I mean that. Like, I mean that. Like, we know who the folks that usually get asked to speak are. We know who they are. We're not going to name them, but we know who they are. And they're great. And we need them. And we love them. And they support us. And they help me. And one of them saved my ass 3 weeks ago when I had a panel that I had no idea what I was talking about. And yet, we need to like make space for other siblings who like don't often get a position to speak. And so if you find yourself in a place where you have access to one of those BIPOC celebs, make space for other people, right? And so there's a lot to that question, but I think that's where I'll leave you with. And Ethos, take it away.
The first thing that comes to mind is what I started with. It's integration. Take the time to integrate after your experiences. We all are too much of divine beings for us to not spend time with ourselves. So much of the psychedelic and activist community sacrifice our self-care for the cause, and that's us continuously giving into the addiction of suffering over and over and over again, which means that we're giving into the system that we all want to change and not be a part of. So why are we not taking care of ourselves, especially after psychedelic experiences? That's such a huge energy exertion. Right? So integrate, please meditate. Like, meditation is around for a reason. Yoga is around for a reason. It's not like they haven't existed for thousands of years just for us to not utilize and use these tools and put them inside of our medicine bag, whatever, tool belt, superhero tool belt, whatever you want to call it. But it's so important. And that's the first thing. Like, that's the biggest thing that I'm noticing with even POC folk in the psychedelic community that have an ego that's so big, because we're not integrating and actually coming back down and centering and grounding ourselves. And not only that, it's time for us to acknowledge that we're energetic beings and that we can keep our energy wide open for everyone to come in and infiltrate and influence us and be all wobbly. Or we can actually take the time and acknowledge some of the woo-woo stuff is real and create shields around ourselves every single day and wake up to the fact that we're energetic. Everything is energy. You know, like ever since I started using those practices where I'm literally building a rose force field around myself, everything is so much easier to handle. And when I don't, I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? The next thing that I have to say is please educate yourself. The internet, I'm getting woo-woo on you guys, and this is just who I am, but the internet is the Akashic records. It's literally everything that you absolutely possibly need to get information and also disinformation. And it's an opportunity for you to refine your discernment skills. So then when you go out into the world, you can discern from what is truth and what is not truth for you. What is a full fuck yes for you and what is a fuck no for you. And if you don't go in and self-educate yourself and do the due diligence, and then you come and ask me over and over again to tell you what to do, what to read, what to do, I was like, I'm sorry, but my entire Facebook feed is for you. There's no reason for you to not be doing this. You know how many books I've read in the last 3 years? Over 40 to 50 books. And I haven't listened to anybody else. I don't listen to gurus. I don't listen to that many shamans. I don't listen to that many people. But what I do is read books, because books are usually divine channelings, and they come from something greater and higher than us. Most of the time. Always read the author. I'm mostly trying to not do white cisgendered males right now. I've been working really hard at that. And one of the #1 books that's coming up in my head is The Four Sacred Gifts. And also Michelle Alexander and all those other books. But like, do yourself a favor and educate yourself. You don't need college. You don't need someone else to give you a certification to say you're educated. I haven't received my college education. In fact, it was robbed from me, and I barely graduated from high school, but yet I'm very proud of how much education that I have and how much I'm self-taught. And it makes me a genius in my own right. because I've done the work and I've looked at myself. And not only that, I'm able to ask myself questions when I'm triggered, like, oh, where am I feeling this? How old is the version of me that's actually feeling this trigger? And how old would that version of ethos need to hear from their parents that they never got? And most of the time, it's I'm worthy. I am enough. And you are loved. And I want to tell you all that you are worthy, you are loved, and you are enough to do this work. And you are strong enough. Now go do the work.
Jarrod, can I say something real quick?
Yep.
Based on something that Ethos pinged me on. One of the things that I love about the psychedelic experience is that it is, to me, the merging of science and chemistry. Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry, it went mute for a little bit, and so I was like, oh no. But anyways, this merging of the physical world and the metaphysical world, and how, because we, in our current society, especially in Western society, we have such a disconnect from the material world and the metaphysical world. And if you don't believe in that, that's fine. I'm not here trying to change your mind, but but there's a big disconnect from the metaphysical world and the physical world. And psychedelics is one of the spaces that I appreciate, to where they sort of merge the two in this very harmonic way, and how one kind of explains the other. And so because of that, it is important to have all kinds of voices. So not just the academic voices, the scientific voices, but also the lived experiences, the people who have come to these from Indigenous lens, or people that have come to this through lived experience, and that it all valid because it creates a more whole picture. And so like when Ethos is talking about like not having a college degree, but being very proud of the knowledge that they have amassed based on their own seeker nature, that is valid, and that has just as much value as an academic perspective or a scientific perspective, because it's so much bigger than just those things, than just chemistry, than just something that you can kind of observe. There's so much more to it than that. I'm finished.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would like everybody at home right now, even though we can't hear you, to clap, yell, do whatever you can. Send that energy to this group, because that was so fire, guys. Like, you guys are amazing. We need you. We need your voices. Thank you so much for doing this. And yeah, I admire you. Thank you for this. I'm really honored to be here with you. And I want to move into these Q&As. So someone asked Q&A. Okay. You can, for the person who asked, you want to do it in the panel or in Q&A box, you can do either or. We're looking at them both. I'll answer the first question that's in the, I'll ask the first question here in the Q&A box. I am Cree Indigenous two-spirit person who works in the field of harm reduction. I also do lots of psychedelics since I was 18. I have found it has helped me immensely look at my complex intergenerational trauma and remind me of my blood memory and DNA of my purpose. Do any of you find it helpful towards healing and decolonizing? And miigwech is how I read the word that they wrote. I don't know that word, but MIIGWETCH exclamation point. So sorry if I just said that wrong.
Can I kick this off? Because I actually have a very funny anecdote about this. So I recently did a mushroom journey, and I was at home, and I was with my partner, and the kids were gone. They had gone to their grandmother's house. And so we were like, we were acting like adults. We were like, oh, we're gonna be grown-ups. And so I went outside, and we're trying our hand at gardening and trying to learn how to grow things and whatnot. And we're doing a plant thing. And I was talking about how some of the plants that are in my, that normally grow in that patio area that I have, are starting to get into my containers. And I was like, and I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing or something I need to be concerned about, because I never really took the time to develop a relationship with the plants that I have that grow outside of my house, because, you know, just we never thought to develop that ground. And my partner made the comment, and they were like, they're all just weeds anyways. And that struck me, because I said, is it that they're weeds, or is it that because of colonization, and when colonizers came to this land and they began to want agriculture and farm and produce crops and things of that nature, that, you know, certain plants that were in the area were not conducive to that, and so they categorize them as a weed. And so I was like, so is it that this plant is actually a weed? Because like a dandelion, for instance, dandelions are a medicinal plant. They have healing properties. They're good for you, but they're called a weed. And so I'm having this, you know, mushroom trip, and I'm going, you know, we need to decolonize our garden. You know, we need to decolonize what we think about the physical world, because a lot of our relationship to the physical world is shaped by colonization, as they conquer these lands and they learn these lands and their perceptions of it, which is why we're saying use psychedelics and go out in nature, because it teaches you to have a different relationship with it. And I was like, you know, we need to decolonize our gardens. And so when the question was like, do you find that it helps you deal with decolonization? For me, it helps me to deal with colonization in all these ways that I might not even think that I'm colonized. You know, I would have never thought, you know, I'm colonized in my thoughts of the gardening. And so it was a moment where on that mushroom trip, I, you know, was faced with colonization in this very, very like niche kind of way that I probably would not have even thought that if I had not have been on mushrooms, honestly, during that experience, because mushrooms helped me connect with nature a lot more. And so nature was able to kind of give me that message.
Does anybody else have any input on that, or do we want to move on to another question? All right. Can y'all talk about allies compared to co-conspirators / accomplices in co-liberation work, and or how could psychedelic justice midwife decolonization and reparations work?
Sure.
If you want me to read that again, I can.
I think I got it, but I'm really curious. Again, I'm not just saying this. I'm curious to hear what y'all think about this, because I feel like I'm a little cranky. I don't know. Like I keep hearing these folks be like, these, especially white identified folks, being like, but I'm your co-conspirator. I'm like, are you though? What does that mean? Like, tell me what loop it back to me. What does that mean? Because if you're not like, to me, Oriana, okay, my social location, if you haven't done the work of an ally, you can't be a co-conspirator. I don't even know how you can jump that step yet. And being an ally doesn't mean sharing my shit on Facebook and sending me money on Venmo. Like, being an ally goes a little deeper than that. That's everyday miserable work. It's uncomfortable, nasty work, and it's not easy. And you don't get to say, I'm not gonna. I've had someone recently, a minister in training, say to me, I am not doing anti-racism work because it makes my life harder. And it goes against my religion, they said. I said, what? What? You're the only person in my high school that's going to seminary with me. What do you mean? And they believe it in their core, right? So I don't know what the process, Jarrod, is for. I don't know what the process is to go from from ally to co-conspirator. But I know that the work is nauseating and not sexy and not glamorous, and some days you'll shine and most days you won't. And so I think it looks different according to your social location, right? And your race and your gender and your class. And I think I too have a lot of work to do around my anti-Blackness and how I show up for Black people in my life. And I think it's a huge freaking honor to say you're a co-conspirator. I mean, you level up to that. So I don't, people that want to be my co-conspirator, like, I'll know when you are, and you'll know when you are, but that's something that takes time. So that's all I gotta say.
I would love to hop on real quick. Sorry, Sabrina, you want to go?
You go. I feel like I want to hear your voice.
Okay. I don't really like the word ally or co-conspirator personally. Like, it just sounds so formal. And for me, like, I want to move to a place of relatives and siblings and my brothers and sisters. And it takes a lot for me to be able to call you that. And I call everyone my relatives. And also, like, if I call you my brother, you're my brother. I will call you out on your shit, but also I will work through it. Like, we're in a partnership, man, you know? And what that means to me at this point is that when you mess up, which you will, we all will mess up in our lifetime, and quite often, because this is a messy, imperfect human experience that I freaking love and also hate sometimes, and also am annoyed with the more times than not. It's that when you are being called out or held accountable, that one, you shift your narrative that accountability is you being attacked or you needing to get defensive, and that it's in fact coming from a place of love, that I love you so much, I'm going to hold you at your highest version of yourself. So when that happens, that you take a moment, you step back, take a deep breath in. You know what? I'm going to take ownership for the harmful impact that I've made on you, even though that wasn't my intention. And I'm going to hold myself accountable by taking authentic action steps to do better next time. And I'm sorry. So here it is, taking ownership, taking accountability, making an apology, and then doing actual authentic steps to change that behavior. Those are the people that are my relatives that are in my circle. Anyone that doesn't do those 4 things, I love you. And also, I'm going to close that vein off a little bit. I don't need to have that much blood flow in there. But people who do that, man, you got full vein. We got tons of blood. We have energy. Let's collaborate. Let's be relatives. Let's talk.
Sabrina, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, real quick, ethos, like reading chats while I'm listening. It just resonated so much with me, what everyone is saying. I don't want to leave anybody out because I know I can feel that way sometimes. We're talking about decolonization, right? Like, to me, when we're talking about defining psychedelic justice, we're talking about the process, the grueling and beautiful process of unlearning and learning anew. So even when we're asking this question about, like, when do I get to level up? Like, this is like Super Mario Brothers. A little bit just goes to show that we're still operating from that place of not even knowing how much colonization operates in our bodies, in our minds, in our hearts, in our spirits, in our work, in our love, in our pleasure. So, I kind of like, I like the feeling of co-conspirators. I like literally how it feels in my body. It feels like we're plotting together. You're losing your life, your livelihood for what we're building. So I kind of like the feeling of that. It sort of feels like a fucking mystery show, you know what I'm saying, with a fucking hat, Scooby-Doo type shit. But I'm with Ethos in that, and I think Oriana and Evita will probably agree with this, is that what we're really concerned about is your heart and your ability to activate that that empathy and that accountability. I don't really give a fuck about what you call yourself. Call yourself an ally, an alien, a starfish. It's awesome. Yes, freedom with your name. But I think what I would like is just show up as your vulnerable baby self. And trust me, somebody will hold you. And you will get a lot more out of anything that you do. Psychedelic in this realm, that realm, whatever it is. You will get a lot more out of life if you just surrender. And I know I'm saying this like it's easy. We can't do this. It's not easy, you know what I'm saying? But for me, I've done this in community. So for me, this is me saying, I'm here to do this with y'all. If you're willing and able, I'm here to do it. If you're not, make a sharp right.
Can I answer this question? Do you have time? Oh, you were done too, Sabrina?
We're gonna go for about like 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Answer a little bit less. Answer a few more questions, but yeah. So.
I think when you asked the question, and I got a chance to think about it and listen to everything that everybody else was saying about, when do you, or what is the difference between an ally and a co-conspirator? For me, the difference between an ally and a co-conspirator is it's going from cheering on the movements of marginalized people to helping out, to actually lending a hand. Like one of the things I like to say is everybody got a mouth, but nobody got hands. And so it's moving from a space of just, you know, applauding the work that's being done to actually putting your hand to the work that's being done, and not even in a way that makes you uncomfortable. So in a way that is not easy for you to do, because this is not easy work. So that means confronting someone at the family Thanksgiving table when they make a casually racist comment, or going to a protest and shielding someone, or even just looking inside yourself and examine the ways where you get uncomfortable around these topics. You know, if somebody calls you out, if somebody holds you accountable, and you immediately feel that discomfort, to sit in that discomfort. Because one thing that oppressive classes, like, they believe that their comfort is more important than the marginalized classes being. They don't want to sit in discomfort for the sake of the people in marginalized classes, whether it be Black, whatever they are. And so to me, co-conspiratorship is going, I am going to actually make myself uncomfortable so that this thing can come to pass. I'm not just going to cheer on other people's work doing it. I'm not just going to do it because it affects me. I'm also going to do it because it affects someone who is an extension of me, even if they don't look like me or they don't sound like me, or, we have a different lived experience. And so it's actually being willing to do the work instead of just kind of cheering it on. And also when I think of co-conspirator, because conspirator has kind of a nefarious tone to me. It's like we're plotting to do something that, it's kind of dangerous. Like, it kind of has this term, it has almost like a spy term to me. And so I feel like these movements, they're revolutionary. They're going, we're going to do this kind of dangerous thing because, we're going to like plan this out. And so it's getting down and kind of being willing to do that work, and being willing to sort of take a chance on something daring. And that might cause you to be, like I said, a little bit more uncomfortable. It might cause you to lose a bit of privilege, or it might cause you to have to equal or, divvy up what we have, or what you have, or the privilege that you have. But that is a much more noble experience than sort of existing in this space of having so much while others have so little. And taking a look at why that is, even if that makes you uncomfortable. So me, that's the difference between being an ally. It's cheering it on, as opposed to laying your hands to the plow and listening to the movements of these marginalized identities, and not going, this is what I think you need, but going, this is what you need, and I'm going to listen to what you have to say, and I'm going to put my hands to that work alongside you.
Thank you. I just realized that there are names to these questions, so I apologize if I didn't call your name. Skylar had asked the question about Cree Indigenous Two-Spirit question, and Skylar asked that question, and Matthew Duffy asked another question. This question is from Manija Badi, or Manija. I'm not sure, I'm probably butchered that, sorry. Is there any resource that can help guide processing intergenerational trauma with psychedelics? If y'all can think of any, and that might be something we need to post on the event page if no one has anything up front.
I do have something up front, and I have to admit, it is written by a white man, but it has really nailed collective trauma that's ingrained in our DNA, and that's the gene keys. I am actually a devout student of the gene keys, and I also help people read their profiles, and it's absolutely changed my entire life, because what the gene keys does is a code book of consciousness that integrates the I Ching, Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, indigenous culture and spirituality with quantum physics, epigenetics, quantum biology, and cosmology, and smashes it together into 64 codes. And 11 of these codes are in your profile. And what it really does, it teaches you how to love the shadow. It teaches you how to love the shadows that are a part of you, and it teaches you how to love the shadows that are a part of the collective. Because what we've heard from some of these wonderful humans with me today is that through the darkness comes the brightest of lights. Or in the 51st gene key, it says that what comes before sources, what is to come. And the only way for us to reach what they call our genius frequency or our city frequency is to dive so deep into our shadows, dive so deep into our karma and be with it. And not only that, it gives us a three-pronged approach. It tells us to allow, to accept, and to embrace. And so it brings this question to me. You know, in the Bible, it says that Archangel Michael came and slayed Lucifer. But what if that was a narrative written by the Catholic Church to make us hate our darkness? And in reality, Lucifer is just the son of God, right? Who is a fallen angel. And what if we're all fallen angels on this earth plane? So what if we shift that narrative to Archangel Michael and allowed, accepted, and embraced Lucifer? And what if we brought that to our lives? What if we learned to allow, embrace, and accept all the things that we don't like about us that are wound up in our DNA? And I also have to admit, grandmother ayahuasca has been a really beautiful support for this also. I feel like it's one of her major works, but the Gene Keys has definitely been a big guide of mine through all of this.
I'll just add one quick thing, and thank you, Ethos, for that. And every time you talk about it, I'm like, damn, I need to learn more about this. I like keep putting it to the side. I'm like, Gene Keys sounds too woo-wah to me. And now I'm like, oh my God, every time. So thank you, especially for the folks that are commenting. You know, the intergenerational trauma is a question that I think about often, and I keep hearing about the 7 generations, right? So a lot of my altar work has that sort of intention. I don't want my great-great-grandchild to think that there was no one in their lineage that was doing altar work. I want them to know that there was somebody. And so, you know, if this medicine has been transformational for you, and if it has moved power, and if it has, you know, helped unblock certain things for you, then I think ensuring that your lineages know that is really important. I hope that my parents someday will allow me to, you know, do this medicine work with them. And there's a lot of fear there, right? First gen immigrant, you know, like there's a lot of fear around that. But if this is something that to you has been super impactful, I think if we're talking about intergenerational trauma, the first thing is conversation, right? Making sure that your sons and daughters and children, you know, gender identity, know that this was impactful for you, so that it passes down the lineage. And I think that's one way to go about it. It's not like super spiritual. It's just having a conversation with your people so that they know, this medicine led to this healing, and there's a possibility that it could be the same for you. That's what I would say.
Thank you all. I'll put this question out to Evita first, just because I know that you specifically talk publicly about this, being in the spaces that you're in as a coach and whatnot, and I'll open it up to anybody else who feels called to answer. But Joshua asks, how have psychedelics helped you accept your sexuality?
How have psychedelics helped me accept my sexuality? Well, firstly, when I entered the psychedelic space, I already had a very firm acceptance of my sexuality. I already existed in that space. I've known for a long time that I'm bisexual, that I'm queer. And so I didn't feel like they needed to, I don't feel like I did that work with psychedelics. I didn't carry a lot of shame around that. I would probably say how psychedelics have probably helped me the most with that kind of work is in my learning about trans identities and interacting with trans people in the LGBTQ community, and having to unseat a lot of my cisness, and sort of exist outside of the space where I wasn't so attached to my gender, because I had kind of gone to a space to where I remember my first, or I think it was my second ayahuasca experience. I remember having this moment, and I don't feel like I've ever experienced like this like ego death where it's like you hear people that are like, I died, like, you know, and it's all this like huge thing. I don't think I ever had that experience, but the experience that I had is when I tried to call to mind who I was, I couldn't do it, you know, so I couldn't say, you know, I didn't feel like I was Black. I didn't feel like I was a mom. I didn't feel like I was bisexual. I didn't feel like I was a woman. And existing in that space, excuse me, sorry, here we go. I'm back. So existing in that space of not having such a strong attachment to my gender allowed me to be more flexible with the genders of other people and accept who they are and who they communicate to me that they are. And so I feel like psychedelics have helped me much more with that work and sort of unseating the concept of gender within myself and also for others. And why that comes up for me in this particular question is because we deal with the concept of gender in the LGBTQ community. And so I don't feel like it necessarily helped me get more accepting of my sexuality because I was already pretty much there. But what it helped me do was begin to explore the concepts of gender within myself and gender within the greater society at large. And that is work that I am immensely grateful for.
Thank you for that.
I can just hop on real quick because actually the most of my work is LGBTQ work and re-education around that. And I have to agree that I knew my sexuality since I was 2 years old. Like I always knew I was attracted to women. I don't really know what to call it anymore, but feminine existing human beings. I have to agree though, the gender thing is huge, and it's a huge part of colonization was erasing third gender and two-spirit and gender non-conforming folk out of history. And there is a blatant history of third genders, five genders, infinite or no genders even existing within most indigenous cultures until colonization came. And that's something that I see across the psychedelic world is people playing with that. And I enjoy that. I love seeing people that I would never expect to wear pink in a skirt, wear a skirt and just be really in their feminine. And that's something that I have to agree. As for sexuality, you know, I think that queer theory really defines gender and sexuality as something that could be indefinable and fluid is so that you choose it to be. And that psychedelics just allows for you to have a freedom and a liberation to explore and to find out what is and what isn't yours. And as long as you allow for that to be. And I remember actually after a really beautiful LSD trip, I think it was even when I went to go see Coco and I took a half tab. And I was standing at the bus station and I was like, I'm a they. I'm they, them. Yeah, I'm they, them. And that was a really big pivotal moment for me because that's when I could start accepting that within each and every one of us that we all have the masculine and the feminine within us, and it's colonization to think that it's separate and only based on our genitalia and our organs when in fact there's intersex folk and so many different chromosomes and hormones within each and every one of us, and to think that we have to be these pure boxed human beings is just so ridiculous. And I feel that psychedelics really breaks that apart and really makes you question all of that. So thank you, Evita, for sharing that exploration with gender and bringing that into the fold. And thank you, I forgot who answered that question, but thank you for asking that question. Joshua, thank you for asking that question.
Real quick, I just want to thank you both. And Evita, I think it's so important to give credit where credit is due. And I love and I'm so honored to have heard you say and express that you came complete into this space. And so I welcome, no matter what skin color you have or whatever you look like, feel like, are like, to spend time with yourself identifying the why. Fuck the how, the what, and all the other, the what. Just why. Why everything. And give yourself a little more credit. Let's give ourselves a little more credit for the completeness that we have and the work that we've done to date. Because I don't want people to think that, oh, I'm gonna do psychedelics and I'm gonna be saved, right? Like white Jesus. That's not the game here. This is why we keep hearing us in this conversation saying long-term impact. Just, and I think that this pandemic has given us, some of us, the privilege to have health and have our lives, a lot of time. We use that time because we know that the fucking machine is ready to get back to work. So yeah, just be in that, y'all, with me.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers. I'm going to ask one more question and wrap it up because, you know, especially for you East Coast folks, you need to have that self-love with that sleep. Like, you guys got to get to sleep soon. It's bedtime. So um, the last question, and then we're going to do just a couple announcements, and we'll wrap it up and kind of do some logistical things about how to get in touch and all that. The question here is from Hope. He, any practices to use on journeys that people can use to work on decolonizing themselves. That could mean connecting with ancestral cultures or understanding and healing how white supremacy infects everyone who grows up in the US to some extent.
Real quick though, and I'm gonna stop because I just spoke just now and that's fucked up and breeding. But this is the fun part, guys, y'all. This is the fun part. This is where you get to be creative and tap into things that were never given to you, that you never knew, right? I think Ethos said meditate, yoga, like try a handstand, right? Try a prayer. I mean, whatever, light a candle, journal. I mean, this is that question that really is just saying, like, this is your oyster. Go eat that oyster. Cut that bitch up and eat it. Like, have fun. This is it. This is what that question is telling you guys, telling us all, is to engage with imagination and creativity and community, right? Because we all know that we are our best in community. I'm an introvert. I like to be alone. That's where I really get my shit on. But I love people. And so be in that, y'all. This is the fun, I'm telling you. The first part of the conversation, not so much fun. This is the fun part.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback. Perdón. I'll piggyback and say that if you're looking for like some, you know, practices, right? Like I think we can each speak for ourselves. I think Sabrina is spot on. Try everything, and you will find what feels right. What has worked for me? Woo! I love candles. Do not blow them out. let them finish off by themselves. Great lesson to learn. If you need to blow it out, lick it, cut it off. Create a little altar. I am so grateful for my ancestor altar, and there's a whole bunch of rules and regulations according to your practice and lineage and da-da-da. Create one. Just create one. Make sure that your camera doesn't show it though when you're on Zoom calls. What else? Candles, ancestor altars, morning practices, man. There's nothing like a morning practice. I wake up in the morning, scrape my tongue, 3-minute meditation, 3-minute journaling, 3-minute body work. I don't really get to it every morning. I try to though. A morning practice. You know, my night practices don't work that well because I'm on panels till 10 p.m. But you know, something to start your day and bookend your day, I have found to be really helpful. And I don't know if my ancestors did that, but I know that it's working for me, and that I want my like future generations to like have some sort of embodied practice like that. So that's what I would recommend: ancestor worship work, having a candle ritual, and music for everything.
I'll just hop in, sorry, real quick. We can just assume that most of the things that we've been taught are colonization. So do the opposite. If colonization tells you to be productive all the time, your joy and your rest is revolutionary. If you dancing and making art and not working a 9-to-5 and living in a van is what calls to you, go do it. You have an intuition, boo. It's there. It's within you, and it's always telling you where to go, and it may be quiet at first, but the more you meditate and listen and discern from all the voices in your head, and you don't try to eliminate them, you're just like, oh, what's that voice? Who's that voice? What's that voice? Oh, this is my intuition. The clearer and clearer it gets. So let's just say, follow your intuition.
Thank you. I think now is a good time to wrap things up. I want to ask everybody out there again, give another hoot and holler for this panel. We had we had multiple people in the chat saying that this was the best panel that they've ever been a part of, that they've ever seen. Multiple people were saying it throughout the event. So, I mean, you guys are amazing. You're powerful. I love you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your truth, your experience, speaking truth to people that need to hear it, like me and the rest of us out there. And thank you for being friends. So I really look forward to seeing the work that you're going to do and the work that we're going to do together. I want to make sure you have ample time. I know some of you have to get off real quick to shout out where people can find you, what you're doing, and call people into that. So let's start with Sabrina for you to share.
Thank you. Yes, so I am currently in Colorado, in Boulder. And I'm a nomad by nature and by ancestry, so I hop to where I'm needed. But for now, I'm here, and I am working with SPORE, who are the folks who got the initiative done, I think, a year and a half ago around mushrooms, taking steps towards decolonizing that as a practice here. And sort of my call, what I'm here to do with them and for this community, for Colorado, is to inject equity and justice to the DNA of the organization as we figure out who we're here to serve and how we're here to serve them, placing intention in everything that we do. So you can, I mean, I don't know, I'm not gonna like tell you my IG. My name is Sabina Promedam. Hopefully you have like a flyer and we'll find each other. But yeah, I'm here, I'm there. I do work in Biscaya, in IT, and in New York. And I'm here for y'all. Just reach out and follow up. Thank you.
I'm Oriana. I'm in New York. Hopefully not forever. I'm trying to make it down to Miami. I mean that. Please, if you know anyone down there, let me know. Let's see. I'm a part of SSDP, and I'm real excited for the work that's ahead for us as an organization. We have a lot of work to do, and so you can find me in any of the initiatives that SSDP are a part of. I am super focused and excited and honored to be co-chairing the Intersectionality Committee with Carmen Jackman, who is also working on a low-key business plan with me for some other things. I'm also excited and honored to be working with Sabrina to be a fellow / consultant / anything that Yaya wants me to be, really figuring out, how to make the psychedelic community a lot more equitable for our people. You can also find me and the Misfits with Catherine McLean and Carmen again, and our friend Eileen working on a women's-led initiative. We don't know what we are yet, but we're figuring it out. And Kitty is also a wonderful person that I've met recently. Thank you for showing up today, and all the friends of mine who came. I am trying to build more equitable and inclusive spaces in psychedelia that really have an anti-oppression lens. So whether it's with SSDP or whether it's with Catherine et al., yeah, you can find me there. And I am located, in New York, and I'll be here for some time. Thanks.
My name is Evita Sawyers. I am here in San Diego. You can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. It's La Vida Loca Sawyers. They'll provide that information. And my Facebook page is actually not about psychedelics. Full disclosure, it's actually about non-monogamy and polyamory. So I coach people in non-monogamy and polyamory. That's really what I do. But I also share a lot of information about my work with the Aware Project, about my personal psychedelic usage. I'll also be attending training to begin to operate as a psychedelic facilitator with the emphasis on creating safe spaces for LGBTQ people, women, and people of color to have these experiences, Black people specifically. Okay. And so, yeah, that's where you can find me.
I'm Ethos. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur right now. I share a superfood nutritional system that has absolutely changed my life and healed my gut in incredible ways. And I share those superfoods. That's my main source of income. And everything else right now I'm currently doing for free. My biggest project that I'm doing right now is creating a restorative, integrative, radical accountability. There's so many words for it. Justice system with the council that I mentioned earlier out here in Colorado. And then creating a software platform online with a partner of mine to make it accessible and open source to any organization that wants to implement it into their nonprofit business, organization, retreat center, or whatever, because I'm all about accountability. In addition to that, I'm a commissioned graphic designer and sacred artist. That's actually my biggest intention in this lifetime. And also my biggest why in the next 5 to 10 years, my vision is to create a university of feeling, that instead of coming out of this university with a degree, you come out of it with the sacred business. Because I'm tired of degrees. They don't do anything for anybody, but a business helps create individual prosperity. I'm a big dreamer, and not only that, I stay integral to my word, so keep an eye out for all my projects. Just sent my IG on the chat. You can add me on Facebook, and I'm all about creating, instead of think tanks, field takes, so we all can come together and have these types of conversations in a wider audience. Thank you, Evita, Sabrina, Oriana. I'm so inspired by the three of you and so honored to be on this panel with you and to hear your voices and your stories. And thank you, Ashley and Jarrod, for having us and really leading the way in a really beautiful way. And I look forward to more in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ethos. So much love to all of you again. I really appreciate you. I can't state it enough. I will say, I know some of you asked if you can donate to these folks individually, separately. You could totally do that. And I think Oriana said she's going to post the Venmos on her page. So look out for Oriana if you want to donate directly. You can also do it through the Eventbrite page as well, which will also help the Aware Project. Do it how you see fit. I am going to say that was an amazing event. Really happy, and then I'm gonna really happy how everything went better than I could have possibly. I knew it was gonna be fire, and it was that much better. So I'm gonna kick it over to Ashley to say a few final things, and then we'll close it out.
Thanks, Jarrod. Thank you all for co-collaborating on creating this event. I'm like feeling emotional because like, you know, when I had these big experiences and felt so radicalized to step into a space and be on the edge, you know, and it was like I was so confused that other people that had gone through similar transformative experiences were not radicalized in the same way. And I still don't get it. And so, you know, it livens my soul to hear other people that are moving from that voice into using their hands, like you were saying, yeah, I invite us all, you know, our whole community here to be really active in creating and envisioning what the dream is we want the future to look like. Because Hollywoods and all that shit, it's like envisioning this dystopian cyber future, and then that's what we envision where we need to head, and that's not the world that I want. I want us to create a vision of what the future and how we're going to get there in an equitable way. Ethos, you spoke to that a little bit about like what does that look like to get to this place? What does this look like to do this together? And what needs to happen before we can do this together? yeah, it's just so beautiful to be able to see something that I created so little like turn into a space where we can have these conversations, and this movement continue to grow. It's yeah, it's been a wild fucking few years. The last thing I wanted to say was for gosh, I feel like it's been like a year and a half. I've been wanting to change the logo of the Aware Project. I started it, it's the picture of my eye, because I wanted to find something that was a symbol of a window into the soul. And that was an easy way to do it because I didn't have to do any graphic design and I didn't have to do anything with, it was, you know, it's my image. So, but I realized that, you know, that this is not creating a space that's welcoming to people that don't look like me. And so it was on the back burner for a long time to figure out how to redo our logo to make it more welcoming. And so I put it out in our mailer. I'm putting it out to our community. Please, if you have ideas on how to rebrand us, I'm welcome. I've just been super burnt out from being in grad school and running all these organizations, and so I want to call anyone who wants to support into this space. So thank you all. Thank you, and thank you to the medicines. And thank you to the spirit that is in all of us, that is creating this beautiful apocalypse that we are going through. The apocalypse, if you don't know, means an unveiling. It is unveiling what it has been hidden, and that is clearly what is happening. So. Thank you for being part of this unveiling process and being the space holders for this. So thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. I do want to point out one thing. We are having online integration circles. If you check out Aware Project, our different pages, we have an online integration circle that's a POC only integration circle as well. So you can check out our different offerings for that. It's been slower times in all the way the world is right now. But we look to, this is the first event from Aware Project San Diego. Aware Project LA had a virtual event last week, but we have more coming. So please stay tuned, and thank you everybody for coming. Thank you so much, panel. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you everybody for coming and lending your voices and your energy. We love you, and good night.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for this opportunity. And thank you all for being here. So much love. And thank
See you soon.
Okay.